All right. So we're diving into Gaudiya Vaishnavism,
Yeah.
and you've sent me this incredible stack of sources. We've
Right.
got like scholarly articles, we've got historical accounts, and we
Yeah.
even have analyses of some like modern day groups.
Yeah.
It's going to be really fascinating to see how this all connects.
I think what's striking is that all of these sources, in different ways, paint a picture of a tradition that's grappling with its own internal dynamics.
Oh.
From power struggles to accusations of manipulation.
So it seems like a lot more than just learning what the beliefs are.
Right.
We're getting into the messy human side of the
Yeah.
spiritual path.
Absolutely.
So how does a tradition focused on devotion to Krishna end up dealing with so much conflict?
Right.
That feels like the mystery we're trying to unpack here.
Yeah, to understand that, I think we need to start with the core of Gaudiya Vaishnavism,
Okay.
its beliefs and practices.
Right.
And what jumps out immediately is this emphasis on bhakti.
Right. Bhakti,
Okay,
devotion. And several of these sources highlight that as like the path to liberation.
Yeah.
It's not just about knowing the right things or doing the right rituals. It's
Mhm.
about cultivating this deep, heartfelt connection with Krishna,
Yeah.
often seen alongside Radha.
Right.
And one way to cultivate that connection,
Yeah.
at least as it's described in this source, jimjess-brahmacharya.pdf, is through chanting the Hare Krishna mantra.
Right.
You know, it's interesting how that chant has become so recognizable, even outside of religious circles. But this source suggests it's much more than just a catchy phrase.
Yeah.
It's like this powerful tool for aligning yourself with Krishna's energy.
Right.
It makes me think about the power of repetition in spiritual practices.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's chanting,
Yeah.
whether it's prayer,
Right.
whether it's meditation.
Yeah.
There's something about consistently focusing your mind in a particular way that can create a shift internally. And then keeping faith with Gaturi.pdf brings up another practice that's tied to bhakti. This idea of sadhu sangha,
Right.
essentially surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals,
Yeah.
those also devoted to Krishna.
Yeah.
And it really emphasizes the power of community
Right.
in strengthening one's faith.
Absolutely.
You know, it really resonates with me. It's like the difference between trying to learn a new skill on your own versus having like a group of supportive friends cheering you on.
Right.
That sense of belonging can be so powerful,
Yeah.
especially on a spiritual path. Now, keeping faith with Katuri.pdf also introduces us to these four main branches or mandalas within Gaudiya Vaishnavism.
Okay.
So you've got Nabadwip, Puri, Viraja, and Bengal. And what's fascinating is how each of them has like a slightly different flavor, a unique way of expressing that devotion to Krishna.
Right.
So even within this single tradition, you've
Yeah.
got this diversity, almost like regional dialects of a language. It makes you wonder if that inherent variety
Yeah.
contributed to some of the conflicts and power struggles that emerged later on.
That's a great point. And to understand those power dynamics, I think we need to grasp another key concept
Okay.
that's described in Inikjakjaza Praise-Dilla Sekti.pdf.
Okay.
This concept of Varnasrama.
Okay.
Think of it as like a social and spiritual hierarchy that's designed to guide individuals toward their highest potential,
Right.
with liberation being the ultimate goal.
So it sounds a bit like a caste system.
Yeah.
But with the spiritual dimension.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the guru, the spiritual guide,
Yeah.
plays a big role in this hierarchy.
Absolutely. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
As we'll see, this concept of Varnasrama and the guru's position within it becomes central to these accusations of manipulation
Wow.
that surface in some of these sources.
Okay. So understanding this hierarchy is key to unpacking those later controversies.
Yeah.
But before we get there, let's back up and look at how this tradition actually developed.
That's right.
And that brings us to the rock star of Gaudiya Vaishnavism,
Yeah.
the 16th century figure, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Right.
He's considered an incarnation of Krishna himself,
Yeah.
and his charisma sparked this whole movement. But keeping faith with Katuri.pdf highlights a crucial point. After Chaitanya's passing, there was no clear successor,
Right.
no heir apparent to lead the movement.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's where the drama starts.
Right.
No designated leader. That means a power vacuum.
Yeah.
And that's never a good recipe for
Yeah.
a spiritual movement
Uh-huh.
trying to stay unified.
Absolutely. as you can imagine, different factions emerged,
Yeah.
each vying for authority, each claiming to be the true inheritors of Chaitanya's legacy.
And this source suggests they tried to solidify their claims by interpreting Chaitanya's teachings in ways that benefited their own position. Classic power move.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
And some of the key players in this early period, like Nityananda and Advaita, became lightning rods for controversy. Nityananda's decision to return to married life, for instance, really ruffled feathers.
Yeah.
Even his caste status was called into question.
It's like we see this pattern throughout history.
Yeah.
Religious beliefs intertwine with social norms,
Right.
often leading to clashes.
Yeah.
So how did the movement try to cope with all this infighting?
Well, there was a significant attempt to unify things.
Okay.
This thing called the Katuri Festival,
Okay.
which took place sometime between 1576 and 1580.
Right.
Keeping Faith with Katuri.pdf dives into the details of this gathering.
Okay.
It was meant to bring together Gaudiya Vaishnavas from all the different branches and solidify a shared vision for the tradition.
Sounds like an ambitious undertaking.
It was?
Were they successful?
It was kind of a mixed bag.
Oh.
While it didn't eradicate all the disagreements, it did mark a step towards consolidation.
Okay.
One key figure in mediating between these factions was Janava Devi, one of Chaitanya's close associates, and it seems she played a crucial role in promoting unity and finding common ground.
The source also mentions this Panchatattva mantra being introduced at the festival.
Right.
Did that play a role in unifying the movement?
Yeah. That mantra specifically names 5 key figures: Nityananda, Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivas, and Chaitanya himself.
Oh.
Almost like saying, these are the pillars of our tradition, let's honor them all and move forward together.
So a strategic way to acknowledge different lineages within the movement.
Yeah.
Now let's fast forward a few centuries to the emergence of the Gaudiya math in the 20th century.
Okay.
Our family, the GaudiyaMath.pdf, presents Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur as a reformer and a unifier during this period. I mean, he was a powerhouse.
He was.
Not only did he push to spread Gaudiya Vaishnava teachings globally,
Right.
but he also challenged rigid caste barriers
Yeah.
and fought against what he saw as misinterpretations of the tradition.
Uh-huh.
He comes across as a real force for modernization and expansion. So a pivotal figure in shaping Gaudiya Vaishnavism as we know it today.
Right.
But if he was such a strong unifier, why did the Gaudiya math itself end up fracturing?
Well, that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it takes us to one of the most fascinating and frankly dramatic chapters in this story.
Yeah.
It seems even the best intentions can't always prevent those human impulses for power and control from surfacing.
Oh, boy. So we've got Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur.
Yeah.
This like charismatic leader trying to unify, modernize Gaudiya Vaishnavism.
Yeah.
You'd think things would settle down.
You would think.
But this on the breakup of the GaudiyaMatha.pdf suggests otherwise.
Right.
What happened?
Well, despite his best efforts, the Gaudiya math fractured after his death in 1937.
Oh, wow.
It's almost ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
This strong figure dedicated to unity inadvertently sets the stage for even more division.
It seems like those power dynamics we talked about earlier, rooted in the concept of Varnasrama and the guru's authority, they really came to a head here.
Exactly. The source describes this intense struggle over who would lead the Gaudiya math after Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur's passing.
Okay.
One disciple, Kunjabihari Vidyabhusana, claimed that he was personally appointed by Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur as his successor.
Okay.
But others contested this claim,
Oh.
pointing to instructions that called for a governing body
Okay.
instead of a single leader.
So right from the start, you've got this clash
Right.
between different ideas of leadership,
Yeah.
a single appointed successor
Uh-huh.
versus a more collaborative approach.
Right. And this tension only escalated when Anantavasudeva was chosen as Acharya, the leader, by a majority vote.
Okay.
Kunjabihari and his followers rejected this decision, leading to the first major split within the Gaudiya math.
Wow, so much for unity.
I know.
But it sounds like Anantavasudeva himself became a source of controversy later on.
He did.
Oh.
Initially, he was a respected scholar within the Gaudiya math. But according to the Sons of the breakup of the GaudiyaMatha.pdf, He later became critical of certain Gaudiya math teachings, arguing that they had strayed from the original writings of the six Goswamis, those influential figures from the early movement.
So it's like he was trying to reform the reformers.
Yeah, exactly.
And that got him into trouble.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Ananta Vasudeva went so far as to declare Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur's initiation invalid.
Wow.
This, along with his decision to marry, which went against traditional norms for sannyasis,
Right.
led to his ostracization within the Gaudiya math.
So we see those social and religious norms colliding again.
Yeah.
But what I find fascinating is this pattern of reformers trying to course-correct the tradition.
Right.
First Kuja Vihari,
Uh-huh.
then Ananta Vasudeva. It makes you wonder if this impulse to reinterpret is like inherent to Gaudiya Vaishnavism itself.
This is a great observation. And these events, they triggered a cascade of new branches forming within the Gaudiya math. It's almost like every disagreement, every attempt to reform just splintered the movement further.
And two of the branches that emerged from this tumultuous period were Bhakti Kevala Adulami Maharaja's Gaudiya mission
Right.
and Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhami Baswami Maharaja's branch, which eventually gave rise to ISK Khan.
Precisely.
Okay.
The Sansan, the breakup off the Gaudiyamatha.pdf describes how Bhakti Kevala Adulami Maharaja held this unique position of authority because he was one of the few remaining disciples that had received sannyasa initiation directly from Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur.
Oh, okay.
That gave his Gaudiya mission a certain legitimacy.
So in a way, lineage and who initiated you still mattered even amidst all this fracturing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as for ISK Khan, the Sansan, the breakup off the Gaudiyamatha.pdf suggests that Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaja, along with other disciples, felt this need to express their own individuality and make their own disciples.
Okay.
They wanted more autonomy within the movement.
So it's that age-old tension between unity and individual expression. You see it in so many spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
The desire to belong to something larger than yourself.
Right.
But also the urge to forge your own path.
Absolutely. And as Gaudiya Vaishnavism entered the modern era, this tension continued to play out, sometimes with troubling consequences.
Which brings us to some of the more difficult aspects of this deep dive.
Yeah.
The accusations of manipulation and exploitation
Right.
that surface in Fektinadamadi what Mr. Zaitanian Nude.pdf.
Right.
This source focuses on a specific contemporary group, claiming to be part of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition.
Yeah. And what's striking is that this source comes from individuals claiming to have firsthand experience within this group.
Okay.
It adds this personal layer to the narrative,
Yeah,
a rawness that's hard to ignore.
absolutely. They describe experiencing gaslighting, baiting, and stonewalling. Tactics often associated with emotional manipulation and control.
Right.
It's pretty heavy stuff.
It is. And while it's important to remember that these are accusations, they raise serious questions about the potential for abuse, especially given the power dynamics inherent in the guru-disciple relationship.
And this connects to Analyza Manipulaci.surrender.pdf,
Right.
which analyzes the teachings of Chris Butler, a controversial figure associated with this group.
Right. This source suggests that Butler's teachings, particularly his emphasis on sinfulness and complete surrender to the guru,
Okay.
could foster this dependent psychology in followers,
Yeah.
making them more vulnerable to manipulation.
They even give the example of this straw in the street analogy used in Butler's teachings,
Right.
which portrays the devotee as utterly insignificant, unworthy, entirely reliant on the guru's mercy.
Right. Which leads us to another red flag raised in Inigjaktazapraise-dilasekti.pdf.
Okay.
Gurus demanding extensive work and financial contributions in exchange for initiation.
That seems to contradict the traditional understanding of initiation being a freely given act of grace.
Absolutely it does. And it raises concerns about motives and the potential for exploitation within these contemporary groups.
So we have this complex picture emerging.
Yeah.
A tradition rooted in devotion and love for Krishna, but also one grappling with power control
Right.
and accusations of abuse.
Absolutely.
It's a lot to process.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we started with this beautiful idea of bhakti, devotion as the path to liberation.
Right.
And now we're confronting these like darker aspects of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, power struggles, accusations of manipulation, the potential for abuse within these guru-disciple relationships.
Right.
It feels like such a stark contrast.
It is a stark contrast. And I think it highlights the importance of approaching any spiritual path, not just Gaudiya Vaishnavism, with discernment.
Yeah.
We can't just blindly accept everything we hear or read, especially when there are power dynamics involved.
It's like that saying, trust but verify.
Yeah.
You can be drawn to the beauty and the depth of a tradition, but also be aware of the potential pitfalls. So how do you recommend someone navigate this complexity? How do you balance faith with that critical thinking?
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
I think one approach is to remember that even within a tradition, there can be valid disagreements and diverse interpretations.
Right.
Not every group or teacher will resonate with everyone, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's about finding what feels authentic and aligned with your own values.
That reminds me of something in our family, the Gaudiya Math.pdf.
Yeah.
It emphasizes the possibility of unity and understanding between different branches of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, despite their differences.
Right.
It's like saying, we can all love Krishna in our own way.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the heart of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, bhakti. That pure, heartfelt devotion can exist even amidst disagreements and imperfections.
So what's the takeaway for someone exploring Gaudiya Vaishnavism? Or any spiritual path, for that matter?
Yeah.
What do you want them to remember after this deep dive?
I think it comes down to a few key things. First, don't be afraid to ask tough questions if something doesn't feel right, or if a teaching seems to contradict your own values. Speak up. Seek out multiple perspectives, different teachers, different interpretations.
Don't just rely on a single source of information.
Right.
Do your own research. Listen to your gut. And remember that you always have the right to walk away from a situation that feels harmful.
Absolutely. And ultimately, trust your own intuition.
Yeah.
You have an inner compass that can guide you towards what feels true and nourishing for your soul. No spiritual path is immune to human flaws and power dynamics.
Yeah.
But by staying informed, by staying curious, and by staying true to yourself, you can navigate those complexities and find a path that resonates with your deepest values.
That's a great note to end on. This deep dive into Gaudiya Vaishnavism has been fascinating, eye-opening, and at times challenging. It's a reminder that every spiritual tradition has its complexities. And ultimately, the journey is about finding what resonates with you and allows you to connect with the divine in a way that feels authentic and empowering.